Time for the Tesla and Palantir weekly update. And going to start off with Tesla here. And just to take a look at Tesla, we can see that it did, in fact, close below the 50-week moving average at 265.66. And it almost got down to the 200-week and the 100-week. So the question remains, since it closed below that level, does that mean that it's going to go hit 247 or 244 or even wick below? Well, with Tesla, you can't really say definitely not ever, right? Because anything is possible with Tesla. So we can just keep it in our minds that it is a possibility now because it did close below a level. But when we put on the fibs here, we can see that price did in fact hold the 258.15 right there, which is the 50% linear scale Fibonacci level. So we can go back in time. We can see what that price has done. And let's take off the moving averages just so we can see it. And let's take a look. 50%, 258.15. It did wick through it today, but let's look deeper. It was a resistance back in April 2021. It was a support back in February 2022, March 2022. Then a resistance, 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 breakout back test of that zone. So that is actually a very good development in my opinion, which means if 258 can hold throughout the week next week and in the weeks to come, then perhaps it does not need to go back into the 250s. And other things I want to show you that did line up perfectly to this wick today are a couple of GANs that I want to show you. The first one is this linear scale GAN right here, and I've shown you I've shown you this one numerous times before. And this actually, when you zoom out, once it lost that 358 level that I've been talking about for a while, right? It flipped it to a resistance, then came straight down to hit that arc perfectly, which we go back in time, that was a resistance, resistance, resistance. So that wick actually nailed the arc almost perfectly today. So did I think that was going to be a possibility? No, but did I have this GAN here the whole time to show it was a possibility? Yes, right? When it was at 358, I was like, there's no way it's going to go down there and retest that arc. There's no way, right? But with Tesla, you can never say never because it's a very volatile name and anything is possible. So it was a backtest, right? A backtest of an important GAN symmetrical support, and this is on linear scale, and it's perfect. So let's just focus on that low, the 350. Let's focus on the 358 that I said, and if that continues to hold day over day, week over week, then this could be the beginning of a bottoming process. Now, the other GAN is the log scale GAN, and I actually showed that today on X, and here it is. Right, and this is actually one thing I wanted to point out is log scale. It was also a perfect back test of the logarithmic arcs. So let's go back in time. It was a resistance here, a resistance here, here, resistance here, a resistance here, and even a resistance here, here, and here before it even broke out and got rejected at this green level up here. And what did price just do right now? Well, it back tested the arc for the first time since it broke out. And actually, when you go back in time, it kind of is similar to this period of time where it broke out of the arc and it finally back tested it in 2019. But in this case, it did not go to the bottom one. That's why I didn't think maybe it was going to go to the bottom one on this one, but it ended up doing that. So with that said, this held as support the arc, and now we have a breakout of the previous resistance and a back test of that same arc. This is confluence, guys. Confluence of the 250 zone could be a very powerful support zone, so that's why we're going to watch it next week. But not only that, I would like to bring to your attention the amount of volume we actually saw this week. This is the volume candle right here. And it was essentially 635 million worth of volume right there. That has been the most in a while, really. We haven't seen that much since basically the top, right? The last time we saw that much, that was the top right here. And we kind of tied that, almost didn't quite exceed it, but kind of tied it. So if that was the top with the highest kind of volume, then this possibly could be a bottom because that kind of matches that top volume right up here. So that is another confluence that this has a potential to be a support zone. So we are finally, in my opinion, in the beginning stages of finding support for Tesla because it held levels. Yes, it broke below the 50-week moving average, but that's okay because everybody knows those. Those are very simple, very, very obvious indicators. So the market makers, they can close below those anytime they want just to make people panic. The most important thing here is it held symmetrical support. It did go through the 50% fib, the 258, and that held also as support. So those are the things I'm looking at next week. And if everything continues to hold, if this arc continues to hold, this zone continues to hold, then guess what? It's going to keep on building a base and it's going to recover nicely in the future. And now it's time for Palantir here. And Palantir, it almost got down to the 78.13, but not quite. It didn't quite make it. It fell short for 2 straight weeks in a row. And even when we put on the Ichimoku here, we can see that it did not even touch the baseline even. The baseline's at 78.94. Price got down to 79.15 this week. So still fell a little bit short. So what does that mean? It just means that Palantir is still in the middle of a range. It's still in between the 78.94 and your resistance is going to be the 94.41. But this is a good development because if this 78.13 continues to hold as support, then it can just buy some time, maybe get closer to the weekly cloud before it really wants to break this 104 and go higher. So still a very, very bullish chart. All it had is a monster breakout and a 3 weeks in a row of a correction. So that is normal, right? You have big breakouts, you have big corrections. So this is a normal process in going higher. So my focus is just maintaining the $78 range. But even on log scale, on the log scale GAN here, we can see that also it's basically within reason as well, within the same range. And that blue level of the GAN does sit right around $77, maybe $76.84. And that is essentially right around that $78 zone. So if it did choose to go back down there, then that's okay, right? That is okay to go back down there and retest that if it wanted to. But in the meantime, I think it's just buying time. It's just staying in a range between like the 94 and the 78, just in that range until it's really ready to make its next leg higher. But the good news here is also the volume. You can go look at the volume right here. It's the most volume we've really seen since it kind of really broke out with that monster bullish engulfing candle right here, right? So this could also be a bottoming signal of things as well. So with that said, I do think Palantir is still very, very bullish. You just got to give it some time for it to cool off a little bit before it wants to break into new all-time highs. But that'll happen, right? Just maybe in a few weeks or a few months, just give it time. Let it continue to build a base around 78 or so. And if so, this will continue its journey higher and higher.